Hello, my name is Farzaneh Karegar, and on behalf of my colleagues Ova and Simone, I will present our paper on exploring and evaluating suitable metaphors for explaining differential privacy to users. This research is a result of two projects funded by the Horizon 2020 framework of the European Commission and by the Swedish Knowledge Foundation. Our objective in this work is to investigate how to effectively explain the underlying differentially private data analysis to data subjects to facilitate their decisions by using suitable metaphors. The data subjects are mainly lay users who need to make privacy decisions about sharing their data when confronted with DP-enabled systems. However, researchers have shown that how DP is described in practice is insufficient to help users make informed decisions. Let's play a game. Imagine that I ask all of my audience whether they prefer hard work or cheating to succeed. I give each of you a spinner with two areas, A and B, and some instructions to follow. You spin it one time. If it stands on B, you should tell me your truthful answer. If it stands on A, you should spin it again. This time, if it stands on A, you should tell me that you prefer cheating. Otherwise, you should tell me that you preferred hard work, regardless of your truthful answer to the question. Not knowing about how each of your spinners land, would I be able to distinguish whether your answer to the question is your truthful answer? Of course not. You can deny that the answer is your true answer. I would benefit from what I achieved if I received a large number of answers. And I would gain insights on how many approximately prefer hard work, for example. This technique is randomized response technique. This randomized process satisfies differential privacy, abbreviated as DP, because the distribution of the output is insensitive to changes in one individual user's input. In our work, we use the spinner as a metaphor for local differential privacy. Differentially private mechanisms can be implemented as local and central models. In central models, we have a trusted data aggregator. In local models, however, users do not need to trust the entity responsible for analysis because their data get perturbed before being shared. Although the information disclosure risks substantially differ between these two models, in communicating with users, industry and media outlet DP descriptions do not clearly distinguish between the models, as reported in literature. However, in our work, we distinguished between the local and central models, and we defined three different data analysis scenarios in the context of eHealth. One for local model in scenario 1, and two aggregate level scenarios, scenario 2 and 3, including DP for federated learning. For scenario 1, we chose the metaphor of a noisy picture showing different levels of added noise with different degrees of pixelation. And we also, as I said, used the spinner metaphor with different levels of perturbation. For scenario 2, a noisy combined picture metaphor was used to convey that noise is added to aggregated data and not directly to individual records, for example here, user selfies. For scenario 3, we used a distorted brain for which some of the neural connections are grayed out as a metaphor of a differentially private trained model. Our approach to reach our objective in this work is based on a three-phase framework. In the first two phases, we generated and analytically evaluated our metaphors. In the third phase, we empirically evaluated our metaphors in online interviews with lay users. For the details of the first two phases, please refer to the paper. I will focus on our interviews in the rest of this presentation. We had three research questions to address in our interviews. The first one: what information is required by users to decide about using DP-enabled systems? Question 2. What are users' perception of privacy provided by the proposed metaphors? And question 3. What's the extent of suitability of our metaphors to convey DP to users? We conducted 30 online interviews, 10 for each scenario via Zoom, with lay users we recruited via a prolific platform. The main session of our interviews had two parts. In the first part, we introduced the scenario and conveyed to the interviewees that the privacy technique based on DP would protect their privacy and their data. But we didn't reveal any detail on DP, and then we investigated their expectations and opinions. In the second part, we exposed them to the related metaphor for the scenario and explored their perceptions and opinions of the metaphor. 13 identified themselves as female, 16 as male, and one didn't answer the demographic questions. Our interviewees were relatively young and had diverse academic backgrounds. Our participants were not generally knowledgeable about privacy-enhancing technologies and hadn't heard about DP before the interviews, meaning they were non-experts in privacy. For the details of the study design, sampling, and recruitment, please refer to the paper. A thematic analysis resulted in 12 main themes. The first 4 themes are pre-explanation before exposure to the metaphor, and the rest are post-explanation themes. I will highlight some of the important results based on our research questions. Please refer to the paper for the details of the themes and complete results. The themes addressing research question 1 highlights information needed for trusting DP-enabled systems and sharing data with such systems by data subjects. The results show that the mere presence of a privacy technology is seemingly enough to persuade users to share their data. However, lack of transparency about differential privacy leads to varied expectation and interpretations of who gets access to actual raw data, and also to different correct or incorrect assumptions about DP, and leads to negative impacts on willingness to share data with and trust in DP-enabled systems. Most participants required usable transparency of DP. For example, to know how DP works, how it protects and uses personal data, and to know about the risks of identifications. The themes addressing research question 2 and 3 reveal users' perception about the claimed data protection of DP and their understanding of its different privacy features implied or conveyed by our metaphors. In sum, participants correctly perceived that perturbation leads to privacy protection. They also understood to varying degrees in all scenarios that perturbation protects against identifiability and provides plausible deniability. However, in all scenarios, most of the participants understood the trade-off between accuracy and privacy protection. An analysis of users' perception of privacy features of DP revealed several misconceptions as well. People also had varied perceptions about protection against adversaries with auxiliary information, preferences for the level of distortion, and acceptance of and perceptions about remaining risk across all scenarios. So let's see what misconceptions were. The only common misconception among all scenarios was the perception of noise addition or perturbation being reversible. However, in scenario 1, the reversibility of DP was triggered by the noisy picture metaphor and not by the spinner metaphor. Other misconceptions include the perception of DP enabling selective disclosure and the perception of perturbation on individual records instead of on aggregate level in scenario 2 and 3. Further, there was the perception that aggregation provides enough privacy. In scenario 1, based on the noisy picture metaphor, the description was taken literally and led to the perception of distortion as pixelation of data, or the classic mosaic censorship. Further, it led to the perception of DP as encryption. In scenario 2, it was assumed that how DP worked was a secret, which led to the misconception that knowledge of DP by someone could reveal information about individuals if that person accessed differentially private results of an analysis. Our results revealed in general that misconceptions impact trust, perception of access to data, and willingness to share data with DP-enabled systems. Our interview results showed the plausible suitability of our metaphors, each to a varying degree, to convey the privacy features of DP to lay users. I recommend that interested audience to take a look at Table 2 in the paper, which summarizes the extent of the suitability of our metaphors. At the same time, our study reveals and confirms several challenges that require further attention if we intend to use metaphors. I highlight some of the challenges and recommendations here. However, please refer to the paper for a complete discussion on challenges and recommendations. Based on our results, we recommend future research on the effects of DP explanations that emphasize the reduction of identification risks rather than the feature of accuracy loss when explaining DP to different groups of users. In addition, users should be guided regarding adequate identification risks per context and the implications. Misconceptions about DP are likely triggered by the participants' knowledge of security technologies. For instance, 2 of the participants who were familiar with VPNs and their feature of hiding IP addresses perceived DP as selectively hiding data. Hence, besides considering real-world analogies, DP metaphors should address the challenge of catering for digital world analogies that users may make. Metaphorical explanations inherently suffer from several shortcomings that we need to consider and counteract when we use metaphors to explain privacy technologies to users. For example, half of our participants in scenario 1 preferred to be exposed to the spinner metaphor because they assumed it provided a better privacy accuracy trade-off compared to the noisy picture metaphor. The diverse levels of abstractions as a result of using different metaphors may impose the risk of different or perhaps inaccurate perceptions of privacy protection. Completing metaphors with suitable additional information can be one way to counteract these shortcomings. Thanks a lot for listening to me. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer. You can also contact me via email.